Well, thank you, Becky, for being in the driver's seat for this Zoom functionality. And good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Third Thursday training. Today's training is our annual Action Research Forum. We have two individuals today that'll be sharing their action research projects, and that's a simplified action research project that is the capstone experience for the English Language Instructor Development Program. Today's topics are relevant for essentially everyone. We're talking today about wait time, teacher wait time with students, as well as trauma-informed practices in the classroom. And I'll start by giving just a brief synopsis of the English Language Instructor Development Program. We have an iteration of that occurring next week in Sioux Falls. It is a face-to-face. The first phase of that training is always a face-to-face 3-day experience. We are considering a hybridized model for future iterations. During the pandemic, some of you would have participated virtually in that. One of the most beneficial components of that first step in the process is the in-class mentoring, the classroom immersion and mentoring and coaching from another experienced instructor. And this training is great for anyone who's going to be working with English language learners, as well as administrators. In fact, next week we have an administrator who's going to be observing and participating in a portion of the training to give her ideas about future programming. It certainly is something that equips administrators for supervision and observation and program design of English language acquisition programs. The second step in the ELIDP experience is a simplified action research project that takes place with one's own students. The third is what we're doing today, the Action Research Forum, and the fourth optional step, which is warmly invited, is that those who complete all 3 phases apply for the English Language Instructor Core Credential, and then thereby have a professional state level credential for our field. That's what I have for now, and without too much ado, I would love to introduce one of our participants from last year, Amy Hansen from The Right Turn. And Amy has selected one of my very favorite topics that is germane for all kinds of teachers, and a tremendous reminder for us in our work with learners in the classroom setting. Amy, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. So when I was trying to find something to talk about and to do an action plan about, one of the things that I found the most helpful in working with ESLs, but also when I would sub in the schools, is when you ask a question, letting the question just sit there, letting it hang. A lot of times as teachers, we feel like we need to, if they don't know the answer, we need to jump in and we need to help them. That's a really hard thing not to do. But the longer we let the question sit there, the more they have time to think. And when I started doing ESL, all of our students right now are Spanish speakers. So I tried to start to learn Spanish through apps and different things. And when I came across a reading section, I found myself reading it in Spanish, translating it and trying to say it in English, and then reading it again in the Spanish to try and get that recognition for myself to understand what I was reading. And so I found that it took me a long time to do those 3 things when I was reading and learning a new language. So I started applying that to my classrooms as well. Whenever I would ask a question, especially they're learning a new sentence, they're learning new words. We read it, and then I let them, we'd use Burlington. So, I mean, we have on the board, right? We're learning a new skill, okay? So we would read it. I show them verbally how it sounds, and then we just wait. And you wait, and you wait, and you wait. And so when I found that to be exceptionally helpful, especially when it came to reading a couple of sentences in a row, you're giving their brain enough time to kind of see the way that it is. And then I would hear them reading it, but they would be speaking Spanish, right? Then they're trying to kind of read it, make sure that they have all the words figured out. And so that was kind of what spurred me into learning about this. Then when I started to kind of do some research and see, okay, what is out there to validate this thought and concept that I had and I was trying to mess with. When I went to eric.ed.gov, there's a fantastic article about think time and wait time. And he gives you a lot of resources from Eric Digest about when is this important, why is it important? And a couple things that I found is that it's important for all classrooms, but especially that wait time needs to extend a little bit longer for especially the ESLs, because they are doing that, like translating back and forth. They're trying to get that instilled in their brain, learning the new words, trying to figure out how the sentence is supposed to go. Do I understand what each word is? And that's going to affect their comprehension when they're trying to figure out the vocabulary. So some things that I found out that the research that has been done is that when you allow longer wait times, what they suggest for a lot of questions is 3 seconds is good, 5 seconds is better. So practicing as a teacher, waiting that 5 seconds. And most of my students are in person. I rarely do a Zoom, but as a teacher, you can kind of watch their facial expressions. I let them determine how long I wait. It's up on the board. They're reading it. I'm watching. You can kind of watch the eyes. They're reading it intently. The wheels are turning. They're thinking through it. And then when they kind of sit back and breathe and look at me, you can tell they're finished processing all of it. That's when I say questions, and they'll say yes or no. So giving them that solid, even 5 to 10 seconds, depending on the length of the paragraph they're reading, depending upon the skill level of this new thing that we're learning, how much is in that lesson or that thing I just tried to explain, determines how long. And what I've found in my students, as well as the research has indicated, is that you get less I don't know responses. You get less responses that are just yes and no. They ask me better questions. So when they have time to truly understand the material, now they have better questions that they ask me. It's not just yes, 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 keep moving, keep moving. They're thinking it through. And so they'll ask questions like, one we had this week was, we were learning about health words and I have a cold. Isn't that the word we use for weather and temperatures? So they were recognizing that this word has multiple meanings, that if we would have kept moving too quickly, they wouldn't have understood that. So we take the time, we answer the question so that they can understand it. He and him, right? Great questions. When teacher, we say he, when him, right? So I found that giving that time makes them ask better questions. And when they ask better questions, then they have a better understanding. They have less questions by the end of the lesson. By waiting, having the questions at the beginning of the concept, the middle of the concept, by the time we have the practice and the multiple repetitive saying, and is the sentence correct? They have less questions, they're moving fast. They're like, we got it. So at the end of the lesson, when I ask for questions, they're like, nope, no problem, we got it. So that has been helpful. Let's see here. The questioning strategies tend to be more variant and flexible. They ask additional questions that require more complex information. So their brain is having time to think it through more complexly, therefore their questions are more complex. And so I found it to be helpful. They also answer questions better and self-correct. If they answer it incorrect and I don't say anything because I can still tell they answered, but they're still thinking it through, a lot of times they will change their answer and they will self-correct. They'll go, oh, no, it's this one. And then everybody agrees, yes, that is the correct answer. So they had time, and now they don't feel bad that they got it wrong because I didn't have to tell them it was wrong. They figured it out. So that builds a little bit more confidence, I think, when they were able to figure it out, change their answer. So even if they give you an answer right away, maybe wait, let them keep reading, let them pick up on little hints that are in the question, waiting even after they give you a response, especially if their response is wrong, gives them that chance to self-evaluate. Or if they know you wait, they're like, she's waiting, that must be wrong. Then they'll think about it and you don't have to say anything, be a bad guy, right? Because it's so hard. It's like, you don't want to tell them no. You don't want to tell them it's wrong because you want to build confidence. So when we ask questions, I pause. I am not in a hurry when I ask them a question. We just wait, let them reread the screen, the information, let them think about the question. And it is very student-led, right? Watch their faces. We just got done learning something. They've asked a couple questions. I wait probably 2 to 3 times during a presentation of one slide that we do, right? So we use Burlington English, so it takes you from like the concept to multiple practice screens to a listening and watch screen, and then like a final review. So on each slide, I'm waiting 2 to 3 times per slide, slowing down. If we have to do the lesson, half of it next week, fine. I would rather them understand this one at a slow pace before we move on to the second half. So we're not in a hurry even with our lessons. Let's really get this before we finish the second half, and then we'll go from there. So that's helpful. I think that this article is super helpful. It helped encourage me that I, number one, wasn't doing it wrong, and 2, even increase my wait time. It's because it increases their talk time because a lot of times they read out loud. So if we're wanting to increase student talk time, less teacher talk time, the wait time, I think, also helps with that, because I'm being quiet. They're kind of discussing among themselves. They're trying to think through it. They're repeating the word multiple times, reading it out loud, and that's very helpful. So, the students help and discuss the self-thinking, self-correcting, and better questions, I think, has all been super helpful. And I feel like my students are understanding the material better. They're understanding each lesson more concretely before we move on to a new skill. And it helps them relax a little bit when they're not rushed. We have a very easy, not rushed class. We move at their pace. And I have found that that's been better with their scoring, but also their confidence in communicating with me, and then others, speaking, English speaking staff or other students. They're choosing English more just because they have the time. We're not in a hurry. So that's pretty much what I have. Any questions, I guess?
That's outstanding, Amy. We will have some time for questions and discussion on this topic before moving into our next presentation. We have the space to do that today, and I know a lot of you sitting around this virtual table have similar successes and strategies to share well done, Amy. That was very well articulated and such a great topic. And I am really encouraged to hear the successes that you've seen with your students by being more mindful about that wait time of 3 to 5 seconds each time, giving the students space to grapple with the content. And I so resonate with all of what you said. You just did a really wonderful job.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm going to share some discussion questions here for us. Here it is. So for your consideration, what are some challenges you or your learners are facing when it comes to wait time, processing time, or alternatively, what are some successes that you have seen? What are some of your strategies and resources that you would recommend when it comes to student wait time? So all observations and experiences are invited and welcomed at this time. We have 5 to 10 minutes max for this follow-up discussion. Also welcome are any questions that you have for Amy regarding her action research project.
I actually have a quick question. Let me start my video here so you can see me. So with wait time, sometimes when there is that pause, sometimes you'll get another student that, if you've directed a question to a certain student, you'll get someone else that answers it when you're waiting for the other student to answer. Have you, has that been, it's not really an issue, but have you observed that at all?
Yes. So I think it depends on the group. Sometimes you do have a really strong personality student that maybe their level of English is a little higher. Sometimes that's helpful. I do have one student that she likes coming to the class to refresh on some of the newer thing, like the older skills that I think she's a little past. But sometimes that's helpful. She's been able to say it in Spanish, and everybody goes, oh, okay, now they have better understanding. So sometimes that's a helpful situation. Sometimes if it's a really bossy student and they think that they know and they're just gonna, so I think there is a balance as a teacher. You have to kind of just say, okay, let's go over this again, right? Back up a little bit, go over it. And then I think asking specific students helps reduce that. Thank you, but let's ask them. Let's ask Juan what he thinks. And just kind of redirecting helps. I'm fortunate most of my students are extremely polite and I don't have much of that. When I was in subbing, yes, you always had that bossy little kid that knew all the things and was going to answer all things for you. So that took more redirecting, but I'm blessed to have such polite students now. So
thanks, Amy. Yeah, I've just found that when I've done that, and I love your topic. Sometimes I do have to pre-teach to the class what wait time is so that they know that it's okay for that silence to be there and just to let their classmates think too. So thank you.
Thanks, Elena, for that question and for sharing your experience. So that's really common for instructors. What other questions, successes, or strategies do you have to share? Or questions that you have for Amy as the principal researcher on this project?
Amy, I have a question. You had made a comment about really wanting to avoid situations where we have to inform a student that they're wrong. We're trying to reinforce confidence and nurture an environment that's safe and supportive. And, to the previous question, we're talking almost, it gets into classroom management and to Elena's point, pre-teaching. And so really this question to you, Amy, and the entire group, how do you navigate sensitivities like that while embracing adult education methodology, right? These are not children, they are adults. Some of them coming with extraordinary backgrounds and busy lives, employment, perhaps previous education, perhaps none, and helping them understand how we can use various registers to say no, or, oh, that's, I mean, what kind of language can you scaffold, or how do you approach that? Just some senses, general or specific? I'd be curious.
The phrase I use a lot is they want this, not no, you're wrong, but they want this answer. This answer is correct. So thinking about wording, not no, you're wrong, but the curriculum, the correct answer is they want this one, not directing it at the student, but using it as a general concept of they want. And then going into why, I think is one of the things that I found helpful. And you're right, it's very difficult to navigate letting them know when they're incorrect, because it is a very sensitive thing. You have ESL, they feel very foreign, they're grown adults, they feel like they're little kids now because they're starting learning colors and letters, and that's a hard thing with your confidence to try and have to go back again. But it's important even with kids and, like you said, grown adults education, because maybe they have anxiety or bad experiences. So just trying to word your phrases. I have particular phrases I say, things like they want this, or I think this one.
Okay,
Because I think this one.
I appreciate that response. And just for clarification, if I understood that collocation about they want this, they predicated or referencing the vendor, the curriculum, formal written or formal spoken English, right? Not necessarily GED testing service wants this, native speakers want this.
Because we use Burlington, right? And so
Or
you're kind of
Burlington
referring,
wants this, right?
you're referring to the curriculum, but
Okay.
sometimes I will say Americans will say this one, okay? Because it's just letting them know this is more common. This Americans will say this one. And so
One thing I've also noticed is the teacher can show vulnerability. It is easier to.
Oh, Sarah, it's the audio is just a little bit muffled for me.
Oh, Here, let me put my mic in front of me.
There
Is
we
that
go.
better?
Yes.
That's
Sorry.
better.
I'm trying we're in the same room. She's sitting right next to me, so I have myself on earphones. One thing that I have noticed, I've heard Amy do, and I do it myself, is that we make ourselves a little vulnerable and show that we don't know everything too, especially if you're in a situation where there's an obvious mistake. Like if you're teaching math and the answer is wrong, the answer is wrong. You know, one thing that I've heard Amy do as she learns Spanish is that she's like, yeah, I don't know how to say that in Spanish either. You know, if there was a big English mistake. And I do the same thing in Spanish. I'm like, you know what, look how old I am. And I just learned this 4 years ago when I taught myself math, you know, and so just kind of redirecting and just making us all learners, myself included and Amy included. And that is helpful, especially for an older learner, that they don't think that you know everything in the world either, and it's okay to not know everything.
Laura, I'm going to take back sharing for just a second because I don't have a question, but I want to show you a toy. So, oops. Can you see my timer now? All right.
Yes.
So this is a new feature in Zoom that we just got. And what's cool is you can set it for any time you want. You can start it, it's an app. So you can start it from the app. And you can run it so that it just shows you've got a timer. So if we were on a tighter schedule today to try and get both of our people in for their action research projects, we could have set a timer on them and let it run. Or you can set it so just you can see it. You don't have to share it. Like I can set this and just have it on my screen, my second screen, counting down for me. So I know how much time I'm talking and how much time I'm waiting and how much time they're talking. Just to be able to see and give ourselves some idea. Because sometimes I think our perception of that, even that 3 to 5 seconds, which is not a lot of wait time, I think our perception can be very skewed about how much time that is. So yeah, I
think that's perfect, Becky. And I think that's why I guess I don't consciously think 5 seconds. I'm
Right.
looking at the student's face and I'm letting, like you said, because that feels like forever. But if you're waiting on them, it doesn't feel so daunting to wait 5 seconds because you're watching them process it and wait. And then we've kind of gotten this mode of, to Elena's point, they've learned I'm going to wait, and then they look at me, meaning, okay, I'm done. And
Yep.
yeah, because it does feel like forever.
Very long time sometimes, very long
Cool.
time.
Culturally, is it everyone's experience that you get that eye contact as confirmation? Or do you find there are occasionally cultural sensitivities there as well? With eye contact, facial expressions, body language.
Even if they don't use eye contact, you can usually tell when they're confused or done being confused.
But if they don't show their face, let's say online, it makes it difficult. And we've discussed this. I think one of the Cornerstone staff was telling about how she manages to get people to show their picture, their face. She had a couple of different methods. But I think she started earlier in the year and just, said things like, "Oh, you can't get your video to work," or things like that. But there's other things she said too but it makes a difference. Excuse me.
Our teachers at LSS in Sioux Falls use quite a bit of good, so-so, or problem. And the students who are really fast and they're doing great are likely to give a thumbs up, but the majority will do or so-so. And if I had a student in a wait time instance who gave no gesture, either they didn't understand the request or they're too shy to say they need more time. So I concur with Debbie's sentiment. There's a range of ways to recognize other than eye contact that a student has had enough time. Amy, it sounds like you're managing very beautifully and very gracefully this art of wait time. And I think it's a journey that doesn't end. Can I share with all of you one of my favorite wait time activities? That's zero prep and my all-time favorite thing to do at the beginning of a lesson. My favorite thing to do at the beginning of a lesson is similar to what Amy was describing, but giving the students that wait time of 5 to 10 minutes at the beginning of class to preview the material for the day or review what we learned from the day before with no assistance from me as the instructor, but allowing them in pairs usually, or individually if need be, to just process that content. And I love that phrase or collocation, productive struggle. Those times when we're silent, we don't come to their rescue. We're giving them the beautiful gift of productive struggle time, and what they struggle to achieve gets more hardwired into their memory. So I love that learner-centric nature of wait time, where we're putting more onus on the student instead of feeling like we need to come to their rescue, which is actually taking that struggle away from them. So I saw a nod that it is a journey that doesn't end. And so I really appreciate you bringing this topic back to our attention, something that we all benefit from hearing and considering how can I utilize and leverage that a little bit more. And nice question that we got at the beginning from Elena about those students that pipe in when we wanted someone else to speak. That's one of the classroom management needs that we end up having in adult ed, that we can manage with grace as well. But yeah, just part of the excitement of having learners at various levels and speeds and levels of confidence. Fantastic job, Amy, and thank you everybody for the great discussion. If you're ready, we can proceed to the second speaker today, who is over in the LSS room. There he is, very quickly. Wow, you're fast, Larry. This is Larry Truba, and he is an instructor here at the LSS Center for New Americans. Today, he's sharing on the topic of his curiosity in the past year, which has been trauma-informed practices for English learners, but another topic that applies to all of our learners.
Thanks, Laura. And just a second while I get this going here. Stop sharing for a second. From beginning. There we go. Thank you. Okay. So hello, everyone. And that was a great presentation, Amy. You're a tough act to follow. So, and it's a good reminder for me, because I know that silence does seem like a long time sometimes. So I'll be hoping to employ that. How do I get rid of all of it? Okay. So my topic is, get rid of this at the top.
All that, just kind of you can drag it to the bottom. I don't know if that's
Oh, and,
Larry, I think you're okay. I think what you're seeing is just what you're seeing, and our screens are good. Our screens are
Okay.
clean. So I think you're okay.
my project is mindfulness as a means of reducing the symptoms of trauma in adult ESL learners. That's a mouthful, so I call it MMRITA ESLL for short. So here at LSS, you know, as I'm sure it's the same in many of your institutions, we serve a diverse base of English language learners from many different cultures, many different languages. And, you know, while we don't know on an individual basis, it's fair to assume that a number of them have undergone traumatic experiences as part of their process of coming to the US or before in their native countries. So what we know about trauma is people with trauma have unique educational challenges that affect their bodies and their brains and impact their capacity to learn and retain information. I think ACEs is teaching us more and more about this all the time. So the impacts of trauma do not go away with time. It gets re-triggered. And adult language learners who are struggling to be experiencing the effect, who are struggling may be experiencing the effects of trauma. There are, however, strategies that can be employed to help those who are suffering with trauma. Some of the things my research pointed out, one is to avoid triggers. Avoid references to violence, use both loud and soft voices, avoid yelling. Here at LSS, we have construction going on all the time. So, there are loud booms and things like that. We can't control that, but those are the things that, we know reducing helps. As regards, body language, coming down to eye level when talking to students is a good approach. And routine is also another excellent strategy when working with students, just kind of doing the same thing over and over. Some may even want to consider going over an outline of the class prior to the class so that students know what to expect. And then the topic of my research in particular is on mindfulness. My study has shown that mindfulness can benefit students by promoting emotional balance and a healthy release of potential stress by focusing awareness on the present. It may also help to settle the autonomic nervous system to a healthier level. So here's kind of the hypothesis I came up with as I was doing this. The use of a simple form of mindfulness may have a calming effect upon students in general and help those who suffer from the effects of trauma to overcome educational challenges and enhance the learning experience. So what is mindfulness? I think, it's something that's become more popular, more known in the last probably 10 or 15 years. In essence, it's, being conscious or aware of something, or as the second definition says, a mental state achieved by focusing one's awareness on the present moment while calmly acknowledging and accepting one's feelings and bodily sensations, used as a therapeutic technique. And that's primarily what I've tried to employ with my students, especially with breathing, just kind of bringing people to a place where we start class and we release those stresses that we have, during the day. And I'll go over the process a little bit more in just a minute. There's some critical assumptions as I was coming up with this that came to mind. One is, it's a fair assumption that there are students with trauma, but we can't just say, okay, raise your hand, who's experienced trauma? It's neither professional nor would, one person's, how would people self-identify that? But we assume it's there. Also, I'm not a mental health professional. So in doing this, I wanted to choose something that by all means would do no harm, and not make people feel uncomfortable. And then lastly, since we can't conclusively determine who suffers from trauma, I tried to choose a practice that even if people weren't suffering from trauma, it would have a positive benefit. So what I chose to implement in the class is the 5-finger breathing technique. Some of you may be familiar with it. At first I thought, well, maybe I'd show a slide that would have like a timer and things like that. But I really wanted to make it less technology dependent. Laura suggested the 5-finger method, so I looked into that, and it seemed like a really good approach because most people have a hand they can use to do this. And so essentially the practice is just stretching out your hand, with the fingers wide apart, and then taking the index finger of your other hand and tracing your hand, breathing in and breathing out. Actually, you start off with breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. And then you do that up and down. The whole thing takes maybe 30 seconds at most. And, was really, what I did to the students in introducing this was to explain to them that this is something we do, again, to relieve stress. I tried to make it simple by saying, we all have, or many of us have jobs, we have families, we have bills to pay, and saying these are things that can cause stress sometimes. So that by employing this technique, we're just trying to come to a place where we're thinking about our breathing and we forget about some of the problems so that we start class on a level playing field. I also used a singing bowl. It's certainly not necessary, but I like the sound of it. So it's a good way of kind of signaling start and the end of the activity. My sense, right away was that a number of students really appreciated it. I'm screen sharing, so I can't show you right now, but I'd make these kind of, when I was talking about it, I'd say, we're trying to get rid of all the problems, and I'd motion kind of like shooing the problems to the door. And then I noticed soon students were making that part of the activity too, various shooing motions, and so that was very interesting. So I introduced it with my Oral 3 and Lit 2 classes. We started in July. In part, that coincided with us going back to all in-classroom instruction, which it seemed like, again, a more level playing field and a little easier to do having everyone present in class. And then after doing that for 2 months, I conducted a very simple survey with students. I had my volunteers implement the survey because I didn't want to be standing there and having them think, well, this is what teacher wants me to say. Probably doesn't remove all of the bias, but hopefully that helped to make it a more unbiased survey, and it was anonymous. So 22 students were surveyed, and they responded to the following questions. Do you like I tried to make them simple as possible. Do you like our class breathing practice on a scale from 1 to 4? If you like it, why do you like it? And do you want to stop doing this or do it again next time? And so here are the results I came up with. So do you like our class breathing exercise? 75% of the students responded that they really liked it or liked it. So that was encouraging. We did have 2 students who said they did not like the practice. Question 2, if you like it, why do you like it? And you can see some of the examples down below. It relaxes me. I like it because it feels good. I like the last one. It is a rest for the mind. And then the third question was, do you want to stop doing this or do it again next time? So 75% of those who responded, again, said that they wanted to continue doing it. What I found was interesting that even though there were only 2 students who said they disliked it, that number jumped up to 4 when posed as, do you want to stop? And so one of the things that was important for me too was that even though maybe the overwhelming majority liked it, I did not want to disregard the sentiments of those who said they didn't like it. So we introduced the concept also of if you don't want to do this meditation, that's fine. This is completely optional. In fact, we said that at the outset. We also said, and again, at Laura's suggestion, maybe, for those students who don't want to do the meditation, maybe think of a time in your life when you were very happy or something that made you very happy as an alternate that they could do during that time. And so here are my conclusions from doing it. One, because we don't exactly know who has trauma, we can't empirically establish, that this was a success with the class, because I couldn't do a baseline and then afterward have, okay, this many students before didn't feel it, but now they do. But I do believe the anecdotal and survey evidence suggests that the practice has had a positive effect on most students. I also felt like it had a good effect for class cohesiveness because we come in, we talk, we're talking about the weather, students are kind of straggling in. But then when we do this, it's kind of like a break point, like, okay, now we're in class and now we're ready to start studying. And again, just the kind of the body language of the students who, when I pick up the bell, immediately hold out their hand. I think it's really had a positive benefit. And then this is the last part I spoke about already. We gave an alternate practice, suggested an alternate practice for those who did not want to do meditation. And that's basically it. With that, I'm ready to take any questions you have.
Larry, thank you so much for your efforts in this study with your students. I have one question to start off, and that is, can you tell us a little bit more about what did you mean when you said you get out the bell and the students raise their hand? Can you explain a little bit more what's going on with
Yeah,
that?
so
And,
when you
and
stop
can you show
sharing-
us the bell?
Yeah. So here's the bell. Oops. Let's see, can you see it? And everyone see it? And then just. To me, I haven't, I've done a little bit of meditation, not a lot. I do like the sound. It just kind of like, it kind of clicks in. And what I say, I pick up the bell and students will immediately go like this and start raising their hands. And then some of the other motions, like I said, when we're done at the end, or at the beginning, they'll be like shooing away their problems. And at the end, a couple of students will be like they're, just releasing all the negative energy. So it's not only, I think, been helpful, it's been kind of fun, as an activity to do with the students.
Thank you, Larry. Larry, did you have the students use the bell, or did you use the bell?
I haven't had the students use the bell. That might be a nice addition to kind of pass it around and let other people do it.
I've posted some discussion questions once again and would like to open up the floor for anyone who has comments, questions, or other strategies that you'd like to suggest that are along the same lines.
Larry, I really enjoyed this. You can't see it, thankfully, but my desk is covered with some reference materials right now for a project that I'm working on with our state's attorney's office, fortunately or unfortunately, to help some younger age kids who are going into a diversion program. And so one of my reference books is about mindfulness, and particularly with children. So, like you say, very simplistic kinds of things. No, we're not therapists or counselors. They have other counselors, but just trying to, talk about some coping skills for stress. And, one of the things that I read that I think is kind of very similar to what you're talking about is an activity where you ask someone to reflect on where their emotions sit in their body. When I'm feeling anxious, where do I feel that? What do I feel specifically? Or when I'm feeling angry, where do I feel that?
Yeah.
And then really a focus, and it's this technique called squeeze and release, which I think is a little more assertive than just the breathing that we do a lot of times. But it's like finding the place where your anger sits, and then you squeeze as hard as you can for a few seconds, and then you let go and try to completely relax that part of the body. And I've tried it on myself, and I find it really effective. I also do love breathing exercises too. There's a few different kinds of breathing things I do when I just want to have a few moments of peace during the day. So I really, really enjoyed this presentation because it spoke to a lot of the things I've kind of been immersed in for a few days now too.
Thanks, Becky.
Yeah. We're all practicing that wait time Amy told us about.
I could ring the bell again.
Hello, Larry. My name is Denise, and I'm a new Cornerstones employee here in the Mitchell office. My initial experience does lie in the public school system, working with students with emotional and behavioral disabilities. And then my most recent experience is managing a psychiatric rehab group home. So I just want to commend you for reminding all of us that just because, you know, we are working with adults doesn't mean that, you know, that they have ever learned how to deal with their stress. And I'm just this week, I started the Burlington English at one of our businesses here, Trail King. I'm thinking, why don't I do that? They're coming in from work, and, you know, just to spend just a few minutes to let all of that work stress go. And so then that we can refocus, or, you know, kind of focus on, you know, the English. So this was a reminder for me, and I just want to thank you for that.
Thank you. Thanks, Denise.
And it's nice to meet you, Larry.
I kind of use that first 5 minutes to help people with their barriers. Like I get a lot more one-on-one time with the model that we're doing right now, but I really ask them, what do you want me to know? And what can I help you with today? And so, you know, it'll be, my baby threw up on me, I'm running late, and I'm a mess, and I feel like, you know, and they'll just tell me whatever. And I'm like, okay, which of these can we solve right now? You know, we have a clothing place downstairs. So I'm like, would you like me to go get you a pair of scrubs so you can change? You know, would you like me to give you a ride somewhere? Can we make a phone call together? And then once they feel in control of that one thing, then I'm like, okay, are you ready for algebra now? You know, and so I don't have a bell, that's, you know, but that's kind of my strategy, to just say, what do you need from me today? What's the one thing we can feel in control of?
Yeah.
Now, are you ready to learn? You know?
Absolutely. And it seems like when so many things kind of seem unglued, if you can just get one of them glued down, you get a little momentum on the other ones. Thanks, Sarah.
We do have a few minutes left. Are there any others who have other strategies that you use with your students, or ideas that you have percolating about mindfulness, regulation, centering? It makes me think of how beautiful it would be if in our English classes we had high enough levels where we could elicit from the students what they do to center themselves. Like Becky was talking about her own personal practice, and it had me thinking about what is mine. And there's a lot of diversity and so many excellent ways to help our students center and to recognize that they do have strategies by which they are managing their own stress, and giving them an opportunity to understand the value of that. And that's something that they can employ in their own learning. I know there are other teachers at LSS who are using some methodologies for mindfulness in the classroom, but Larry, is Rihoko in the room? I don't want to call her out, but I think
she had, I don't know if she's here or.
Probably not. I think she had a family conflict at this time, but I have opportunities to step into her classroom on occasion, and she utilizes one of the timers and plays some soft, relaxing music. And in fact, today I walked into her classroom to make an announcement to some of her students, and there was this very soothing music playing in the background as they were doing group activities. And I couldn't help but comment on how relaxing it was, and I need that in my office.
Thank you for sharing, Larry. One of the things that I haven't really had time to implement here with ESL, but that I did in the schools was when they had a lot of writing or they had a lot of math to do, YouTube has some amazing 3 or 8 hour long calming music, but then it has the underwater ocean theme. They're just like cameras. They sit in an aquarium tank or at the bottom of the ocean, and it's just got fish and it has turtles. And I'm telling you what, that is so relaxing, and the kids just work so much better having just a little bit of music and just those fish floating in the background. And then when they got done, they weren't as naughty because they were just watching the fish when they were finished with their project, and kind of reduced behaviors, even with kids. But I think as adults, all the teachers that come in and they just get mesmerized by it. And so, I mean, even as adults, we could turn that on, or just something for you to turn on the background when you're working or stressed. Fish are amazing.
That's a great idea. Laura, maybe we can get some aquariums in all the classes.
Thanks for thinking outside the box, Larry. I appreciate that. Yeah, I might have to talk to Heather. She has some aquarium expertise, I understand.
Well,
Thank
we
you.
are down to the end, and before I turn it back over to Laura, I just want to say, Laura, thank you for continuing to make the Action Research Project part of the EL IDP experience. And thank you to Larry and Amy. I always learn so much whenever I get to hear the Action Research presentations. I appreciate the efforts of all of our teachers so much, and it's great to hear the expertise and the learning that you've all done as well. So thank you for that. And I'll turn it back over to you, Laura, to wrap us up.
Thank you, Becky, for hosting us. And I concur. I learn a great deal from hearing from the teachers, and everyone has a very unique trajectory or a unique project that they decide to pursue. And we all benefit from hearing about your experiences. And I want to thank everyone for your discussion today. I don't know, I know John Anderson is here today. John, did you have any closing words you'd like to share with us?
No, here, and yeah, the capstone project, the forum, is a highlight for me as well. And really, you know, when you're tasked with sharing your experience with others, right, and teaching others about it, I think that's really where that metacognitive benefit lies. So kudos to Amy and Larry. Thank you for sharing. Good discussion, good questions and perspective. And I wish you all a safe and lovely evening.
Thanks
Thanks for
everybody.
being here. Thanks, everybody.
Bye now.